Hello, everyone. Welcome into the Rochester Press Box. Thanks for joining us. Bill Pucko with you. Happy as always, and happy to have Tariq Spence back.
What I miss?
Welcome back.
I know. What did I miss over the last, 14 days?
Plenty. There's always something to talk about. We'll get right to that. Pat Duffy with the Olympic.
Come on, is there anything better than international hockey, cool. Right? Like half of the greatest storylines of all time involve international hockey games. Olympics, come on!
Have we gotten a look at the new ones yet? Do we know what they look like?
I hate them. Yeah, they look terrible. They look awful.
That's not supposed to happen.
They keep getting worse and worse every year. Like, you had perfection in 1980. These ones I like a lot. The early 90s were phenomenal. It just keeps getting worse and worse.
Can I just confess, though, hockey jerseys are the best worn out-of-game jerseys in sports.
Absolutely, I agree.
No NFL, no NBA, nothing. The best thing, hockey jersey.
I had my kid with a Sharks and a Panthers jersey. I thought the Florida Panthers and the San Jose Sharks were great when they were kids. They wore them everywhere. Yep, Brian Flores made the news, and I mean this in all sincerity, as a prominent member of the black community here in Rochester, one of the most important voices in town. Mm-hmm. I want to know what you think about the situation.
I absolutely applaud him for bringing it out. I'm disgusted as a Giants fan that the process is as Flores says it is. This is all alleged. She's put it in a lawsuit. But I'm very disappointed in the fact that...
and sum it up a little bit, too.
Well, for those that may not know, Flores basically is suing the Giants, the Broncos, and the Dolphins, which is really a serious one, over the discrimination of hiring for a head coaching job. So basically, let me get to the Giants first. First of all, if this is true about the text message between Bill Belichick and Brian Daboll and Brian Flores being confused and leading to the fact that Flores was just about to interview for the Giants position when Bill Belichick sent an errant text message to the wrong Brian to let them know, hey, by the way, I hear you have the job, and then take it back saying, oops, sorry, I messed up. I sent it to the wrong person. If that is absolutely true, it just goes to show you that the Rooney Rule needs to be changed dramatically, that you're going to have to put in compliance managers from the NFL. Somebody's going to have to go through this whole entire hiring process so that it isn't some sort of sham and they're just not using black coaches or bringing in potential black coaches as some sort of way to just say, hey, we're filling a requirement here, that they really are candidates. I hope Brian Flores wins this lawsuit. I hope he does it loudly, but I know the NFL, they'll try to settle this very quickly right after the Super Bowl, try to sweep it under the rug. But this is a real serious issue, and I applaud Flores because he might not be an NFL head coach after this.
Yeah, the landscape really puzzles me. Is that it comes up again. Flores hasn't interviewed for a job that he's interested in yet with a team that apparently has already hired Brian Daboll, Bill's former offensive coordinator, as its head coach. Mm-hmm. And a third-party guy, Bill Belichick, knows this before Flores does.
Which goes to the inner network, which goes to what everybody's trying to suppress here, the fact that there is another network inside of the network and that a candidate that's brought in
look worse.
Really isn't a candidate. It's just a candidate to say, hey, here's what we're interested in, but we've already made our decision before we talk to them.
So the funniest thing about this, right? 2 hours after this long and detailed lawsuit comes out, and it's pages long. If you haven't read the whole thing, I mean, there are depths to this thing. The NFL comes out and says that the allegations are baseless. That was a hell of a 120-minute investigation you did on this entire thing. And I'll ask this question sincerely, right? Because it's been 20 years now since the Rooney Rule existed. There's one story that we're aware of, right? And that would be Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh, where they were going to go with Ken Whisenhunt as the head coach. They brought Tomlin in because of the Rooney Rule, and the family was so impressed out in Pittsburgh that they went with Tomlin instead, and we all saw how that went, right? Not that every hire is going to be that successful. What can you do to fix it, even if you bring in compliance officers? Because look at who we're dealing with here, right? You have billionaire business owners who are stubborn in general. Then you have the network within the network, that old boys club. The fact that Belichick knew this stuff.
That's shocking to me.
I mean, but it's not. I mean, look, you've been around the NFL covering these things.
But ahead of a guy who's interviewing for the job. I made a comment, I said, this looks terrible. And he said, that's what it looks terrible. It is terrible.
Yeah, but here's the thing. You're very naive to think this stuff wasn't already happening. So here is my sincere question. If you have a bunch of people that are not progressive, by the way, how did writing end racism in the end zones not completely solve all of this the last couple of years, right? Like, how did that not? What legitimate thing can be done to fix it? Because I'm afraid, looking at all of this from the outside, there isn't a legitimate thing. Like you said, Flores is going to get paid, right? Guys, and understandably, who don't want to lose an opportunity to get one of these rare jobs as a person of color in the NFL aren't going to speak out because you're looking out for your family. What can be done? What can be done?
Last word on it.
I honestly not sure exactly immediately, but remember, I don't know if it was on this show last year or the year before. I remember making a comment about making sure you hire NFL coaches after the NFL season, because here's what you're going to run into going into the Super Bowl. What's going to happen here? The NFL can't stay quiet on this. This is going to get brought up. This is not a small thing. Other previous coaches might start to speak up, and now you start looking at maybe Leslie Frazier for the Giants job. Was I really a candidate, or was I brought in as sort of one of those individuals that could have gotten this job but didn't because I'm not in that network?
Leslie Frazier spoke on this in an article in The Athletic 2 years ago. They asked him about his opportunities as a head coach afterwards, and he talked about he would go to the combine and he would have other coaches and administrators in the league tell him how phenomenal his defenses were doing and how the schemes were amazing, yet he never was interviewed for head coaching jobs. He had an interview with the Chicago Bears that everybody on the outside knew. I mean, Frazier including him probably. There was a sham interview. And he's at the point now where his age might restrict him from becoming a head coach because you want to move forward with a guy 5 to 10 years playing down the road. Like, look, you look at guys like McDaniels. You look at guys like Chip Kelly. You look at guys like former Bills coach who I despise, Doug Marrone. Those guys are all getting multiple opportunities. Why does a guy like Frazier not get multiple opportunities? Why does a guy like Hugh Jackson, who, by the way, infers this week that he was paid to lose games while in Cleveland, hold on to one job and never get a shot again? Like it.
Eric Bieniemy. Look at all the number one guy for the last 3 years gets no head coaching job.
It's all there. It's all there. If you have watched it over the last 20 years, it's obvious. This Brian Flores story is a bombshell, but it's not at the same time.
We're talking Buffalo Bills next here on the Rochester Press Box. Welcome back. Thanks for joining us here on the Rochester Press Box. Our Buffalo Bills segment brought to you by Ralph Honda. For 3 generations and celebrating 50 years as Rochester's first and oldest Honda dealer, visit Ralph Honda today and find out how we do Honda right. It's ralphhonda.com. For the Buffalo Bills, and it's sort of a continuation of the first segment here, the Bills in this Flores situation don't come off all that well either.
Well, I mean, I get that Joe Shane, the new GM, who was the assistant GM in Buffalo, I mean,
is the one that royally, I mean, he broke the Rooney Rule and got caught.
All right, but here's the thing. And I don't want this to sound like a defense. So the story in the lawsuit goes that the Mara family who owned the Giants reached out to Flores immediately after they fired Joe Judge. And then a couple weeks later, they hire Shane, and that moves on. I understand why a guy who was in a building with someone like Brian Daboll would be leaning to make that hire. It doesn't make it right that he doesn't go outside and make other hires. But even if you sit down with Flores in a good faith interview where you have your idea open, I understand why someone that you work so closely with, who has had some of the most successful offenses in the NFL the last couple of years, would be the person that you're leaning towards. I mean, part of me feels bad, like, for these two guys now that are going to be going in this together because, look, Daboll especially. Yes, I mean, Daboll had nothing to do with any of this. He's an innocent guy in this whole situation. I mean, whether he knew or not, there was no effect he was going to have. And look, he's not going to offer to give up his job for a guy he's competing with. He's going to be compared to Flores for his entire Giants tenure if he's not successful the second he walks through the door. And you're a Giants fan. What's he got to be successful with?
Well, I mean, listen, we'll find out who they get as far as their next quarterback is going to be, if it's going to be Daniel Jones or not. But I thought about Daboll for a second when I was thinking about Brian Flores. And I thought to myself, I'm like, here's a guy who gets a shot, works his way through it. Okay, yes, he comes with the GM. I'm not sure if that was a deal beforehand or afterhand because the timeline's all jumbled up. So now the Maras were interested. So okay, we can get Flores here. Let's find out. We get a new GM. GM's like, hey, I got this guy, offensive guy. I think we can work well. You bring him in. Okay, he's now your head coach. Maybe you thought about Flores beforehand, or maybe they wanted Daboll and they wanted the GM. Like, we don't know how it plays out. So now is all these different timelines of communication. I think Daboll will be fine, but he can't wait for the first game of the year because that's when your record now starts. We'll wait and see what happens with that going forward. What are you going to do with Ken Dorsey now, with your offensive coordinator? I'm
excited about Ken Dorsey as the offensive coordinator. You guys aren't excited about Ken Dorsey?
He was a hot property. I mean, apparently they say in addition to the Giants, where Daboll wanted to bring him on, he apparently had, 3 other interviews with teams that wanted to hire him as an OC.
If you want to eventually be a head coach, you look around the league at open offensive coordinator positions. Of course you're staying with Josh Allen. Are you out of your mind? I mean, look, we're going to find out real fast whether Josh Allen was a product of Brian Daboll's offense, or Brian Daboll's offense was a product of Josh Allen?
What do you think?
Well, I mean, look, this is not Brian Daboll hate. However, you look at the stops that Brian Daboll has made before. He had 2 stops without the talent that he had in Buffalo, obviously. But there's a reason why on his 3rd offensive coordinator run, he got a job as a head coach and not in the first 2.
But isn't it refreshing? Like, Dorsey can go at this a little bit different than the way the Bills have attacked KC the last 2 years. Maybe going punch for them may not work a 3rd time. Maybe a different approach with a different OC might work this time.
So he had some influence. I mean, he's the quarterback's coach, and he and Allen certainly know each other really well. And the interesting thing now is he becomes offensive coordinator with essentially a finished product.
Yeah. Well, I mean, making the suggestions and then making the call, is 2 different things. So this is going to be very interesting to go forward. Now you've got a burning desire for both Allen and Diggs, if Casey's there again, and you face them again, to go there or hopefully have them come to Buffalo and play that game.
There was a lot of pressure, though, right? The success that the Bills' offense has had the last couple of years has been enormous. You're going to have to fill a couple of roles here. Cole Beasley probably won't be back based on his cap number. Emmanuel Sanders may not be back. You're going to have Gabe Davis now officially stepping into that number 2 role, which, ask Alvin Harper, is a very hard thing to do, to go from 2 to 3 or 3 to 2 or 2 to 1, right? Like, any cracks in this offense, any regression that looks like regression anyway, is going to fall solely at the feet of Ken Dorsey. The pressure is on this kid. It's Super Bowl or bust next year. I say kid, he's like 40. But it's Super Bowl or bust next year, and it's all on him.
You'll be calling 40-year-olds kids in a very short period of time.
Listen, let's not talk about your nightmares. I'm still young.
Our Buffalo Bills segment brought to you by Ralph Honda. Like it or not is next. Here's the Press Box Trivia question, brought to you by Market View Liquor, where exceptional customer service meets an extensive selection. Jefferson Road at 390.
From travel to radio days to bloopers. Oh, and I have a special guest. You know Steve Hausman. He joins me on my next podcast at thegetawayguy.com.
Here's the Press Box Trivia answer, brought to you by Market View Liquor, where exceptional customer service meets an extensive selection. Jefferson Road at 390.
Are you facing criminal charges from a DWI and feel that you never imagined it could happen to you? Contact attorneys with years of experience as prosecutors and defenders. Contact Ganguly Brothers Law today for a free consultation. You can put your trust in us.
Welcome back. Thanks for joining us. This is the Rochester Press Box. Our Like It or Not segment brought to you by Ganguly Brothers Law. Attorneys with years of experience defending the accused. Do not go unprepared. Contact Ganguly Law today. Like it or not, I know we love it here, and I'm interested in the perspective because there's such a hate for this guy, Tom Brady's retirement.
Oh, I love the retirement. I mean, it's all over with. The torment that the people have had to deal with for 22 years.
33-3 against the Bills' career.
Listen, it's the end. It's over now. The countdowns to the Hall of Fame. Finally, it's all gone. It's cemented. So you don't have to have any nightmares anymore.
Who's having nightmares? Who cares?
The great Western New York nightmare.
Who cares about this guy anymore? By the way, do you guys really believe he's done? You really believe that he's never going to take another NFL snap ever again?
Yeah, he's done.
That psycho, that man who is a legitimate psycho, who has to pretend to be a human being when they put a camera to, I like my children and my wife and everything is fine. Tell me I'm wrong, man. The guy's I'm wrong.
You're wrong.
Says New England guy.
The reason why you're wrong is because he got so mad last week when somebody else took the shine away from him, and then he 2 days later does the same exact thing.
Yeah, that tells me he's a psycho who will be back at some point.
Vote on that?
Yeah, he's not having nightmares.
Tell me I'm wrong. Based on everything you've seen about Brady, how petty he is, how far out of his way he goes to prove a point, and the weird things that he does, this ain't over yet. You heard it here first. This ain't
First
over.
and only.
Okay.
Like it or not, brought to you by Ganguly Brothers Law. Unfinished Business is next.
I'll pray for you. The Press Box Stat of the Week is being brought to you by McArdle's Restaurant in Fairport. McArdle's is open 7 days a week with dining available indoors and out, takeout and delivery. Come home to McArdle's.
And now to Eichel. He floated one. Score!
Welcome back. Thanks for joining us here on the Rochester Press Box. Having a good time. Time for unfinished business. And Pat starts us.
Sports fans, we made a mistake because for years and years and years, when those cable packages got expensive, we said to ourselves, well, look, why don't you just let me buy what I want to buy individually? And then streaming services came up so we could watch whatever we wanted and pay for the sports that we wanted. And they started buying rights to different sports. And we thought, this is great. I don't have to pay for tennis or golf or other sports that I don't want to watch. I can focus in on my things. Well, we were talking about the Olympics coming up, international hockey in particular. And the last Olympic go-around a year ago for the Summer Olympics, I made a horrific discovery. I love international basketball too, and I got up at 6 o'clock in the morning to watch Team USA play. And guess what? They weren't on TV. They were on the Peacock streaming service, and I had to pay for the Peacock streaming service to watch USA basketball play like some country I had never heard of before, and I wasn't going to do that. And then this season came along, and ESPN bought the rights to the NHL, and I was all excited till I found out that the 8 games that the Sabres would be playing on ESPN, I had to pay for ESPN Plus to watch them online, which again I had to do earlier this week when they played the Golden Knights, and my streaming service wasn't working the right way, had to log out and log back in. The point I'm making is this: they're going to do it again for international hockey and other things that you want to watch, and the NFL is on the cusp of selling streaming rights to Amazon and places like that. And you're out of your mind if you don't think that there's going to be an added cost for those games as well based on how much money it's going to cost. Do I want to watch baseball across the country? Well, guess what? If I want to watch my team on a market, I got to pay a whole bunch of money to buy a whole package and hope that they're not playing a team near me that's going to black them out when they do it. This dream that we had of paying for only the things we wanted to watch, we didn't realize it was going to blow up on our face when we wanted to watch everything else that we weren't initially cheering for. I'm rambling and I'm sorry. My point is this. We had it. We had everything we could have wanted. Multiple sports stations that were going to show us everything all the time. And we wanted something else. And we blew it. I can't afford this. Can't afford this.
Brian Flores had it too. It's an NFL job as a head coach. Only 30 people get to actually have it during a season, depending on if there's an interim coach and somebody gets fired. Flores was able to get that job after hard work working with the Patriots and then going on to the Dolphins. Then, allegedly, according to his lawsuit, he was offered $100,000 to lose games in order for the organization to get top picks. Now, you're asking a black coach who fought very hard to get to the NFL head coaching job to lose those games and possibly get a top pick, taking on the legacy of all the coaches that fought for him to get that job. That's an investigation the NFL should look into with the Miami Dolphins. I'm disappointed with the Giants. I'm disappointed with the Broncos. But to ask a coach who's worked that hard to lose games and then deal with it afterwards, it's unacceptable.
Piggybacking on Tariq's comments, here's what we definitely know about the Brian Flores class action lawsuit against the National Football League. He isn't apt to be the beneficiary of his own sacrifice. History tells us that. When Jackie Robinson broke Major League Baseball's color barrier in 1947, it was no picnic for him personally. Every day there was a new battle to fight, bigotry to overcome, sacrifices to make. Most of the benefits came long after he was around to share in them. Baseball immortality does him no good now. The Colin Kaepernick legacy remains to be seen. He literally took a knee for freedom of expression and paid for it at the age of 29 with his professional football career. The name that came to me first when the Flores story broke was Curt Flood. Flood was 31 and in the prime of a productive baseball career when in 1969, the St. Louis Cardinals traded him to the Philadelphia Phillies. A bad team back then, a bad organization with a decrepit stadium and an often abusive fan base. So backed by the Players Union, which otherwise gave him zero public support, Flood filed suit against baseball claiming, quote, "I do not feel that I am a piece of property to be bought and sold irrespective to my wishes." Flood's case went all the way to the Supreme Court, where he lost. But his actions set in motion the advent of free agency and a parameter for players' rights. Curt, his career now over, received a modicum of credit and none of the benefits. And so it is with Brian Flores, who is still an active candidate for some high-ranking NFL jobs. By fighting against unfair and biased hiring practices, he is taking one for the team. Because while progress and some good is very likely to come of this someday, Flores, his life, and his career from this point on will be remembered only as a footnote. That is Unfinished Business, and that is our program. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Some good discussion today.
Hopefully some changes soon to the Rooney Rule because it needs to get updated to 2022.
Ditto.
Right. You can always count on him to just punctuate the show at the end. Thank you for joining us. See you next week for the Rochester Press Box.